Okay, good afternoon. I was hoping to use the audio, but they just cannot get it to work. So we're gonna try to be as loud as I can be. And raise your hand if you don't hear me. I'm Bob Rockmaker, President and CEO of the Flight School Association of North America. Thank you for joining us up here today at Migration. Hopefully, we're going to bring and share some information that maybe is new. I know there'll be at least one thing new today that you probably are not aware of. And I'd like to just recognize two of our board members that actually are here. Jim White, actually, from Double Eagle Aviation in Tucson, and Chris Erlinson from Tennessee Flight Training in Nashville, Tennessee. And they help guide me and keep me on the center line from time to time when I divert off a little bit. Hopefully not too often. Okay. So, I thought I would just start a little bit here with the mission statement. You know, organizations that are well managed and run need to have a mission statement. Just go back a minute, Justin. We'll go back. This mission statement has been looked at and revised over the last 14 years, several times, and for the most part, I think we've had one, maybe two little tweaks to the mission statement. So we are staying on task, on focus for this organization. Maybe somebody here wants to find out why did we form this, and I seldom say this, and our board members know it, but I founded this organization because there was a need to have somebody strictly in the silo of the flight training world in America. And there's other wonderful alphabet groups out there, but there was nobody dedicated to the business of flight training. And it's a business, as you all know, I'm sure. By show of hands, just so we get an idea, who's a flight school in here right now, please?
Sorry, what?
Who is a flight school? Do you have a flight school?
Well, I'm an independent, so yeah, I'm a flight school.
Okay. Flight instructors? Okay, thank you. So you can see the last line, foster best business practices. That is a huge item, you know, in our mission statement, because even today, best business practices are not always being followed by some of the 1,600 flight schools in America. And it's leading to problems that absolutely impact every flight school at every level. Okay, go to the next one, Justin, please. You can read the words, hopefully the letters are big enough for you, you know, from touching on the youth. Again, when we formed this, we recognized the youth. We started Aero Camp in Posada before almost anybody had anything for kids, period, except for EA. We started it, called Aero Camp. We're not going to have time to do an Aero Camp, but none of this has been repopulated for this meeting. It has stuck, this mission statement has stuck. The pilot population, you all know, we used to have about 800,000 pilots, which did not include UAS. And today, the FAA's calculation for the number of total airmen includes UAS. And there's at least 300,000 plus UAS people out there. So our pilot population is down basically from about 800,000 at the peak in the upper 70s to roughly 350, 400,000 airmen, and that includes everybody but military. So for all the work that's being done in the industry, the line isn't going the right way. For all the money that's being invested in the industry, it's still not turning around. Safety, obviously, is important to us. The past 3 years, we have become very involved with the FAA, the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee. Myself, I'm chairing the communication work group as the co-chair with Tom Hoffman from FAA. Tom is in charge of all publications from FAA. Great guy, and we're working on some really great communications. Chris is on that committee, as a matter of fact. I brought a few schools into that working group. And the final area, work in alliance with the aviation aerospace industry. So that's our mission statement. It's on our website, but I just thought you ought to know about it. And when I went to form this organization, and this is the true history, it started when I was involved as the executive director for a state association. And we had a flight training committee. And the committee's mission was to try to enhance flight training in the state of Pennsylvania. This was a state trade association. And from that committee, we formed an annual conference gathering, and we had 5 of those. The last one was in April of 2001. You all know 2001. Everybody knows what happened with the terror attacks in September. And that state trade association came to me and said, it looks like aviation is pretty well not moving anywhere. And so we decided, jointly, collaboratively, we weren't going to continue this regional flight training conference that brought together New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I said to myself, once the aviation industry got itself back organized again, okay, and you all know flight training schools were vetted. Every single school was vetted by sheriff's offices, local FBI, whatever the LEO group would have been. And it was interesting because this young man here happens to be my son, okay? He was a kid at the time, and the Sunday after the terror attacks, and this is a true story, this is a movie, but don't have time to make it. My son and daughter were outside in the yard. I was out doing some gardening. And actually they were inside rather, or one of them was inside, I forget who was inside or who was outside. But somebody came to me and said there's a phone call, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday from an agent. And I said, well, okay, have them call back during the week. And subsequently, they came back out again and said, well, he's not hanging up the phone, and they need to talk to you, and if you don't come to the phone, they're going to send people to the house. Okay. And I went back in, it was the FBI, and I'll shorten this up and give a few other slides to get into. I'm going to give you some meat on the bone. This is just some history. He said to me, how many flight schools are there? And I said, 2,400, give or take. And he said, that's not the number we have. I said, well, I don't know what else to tell you, that there's about 2,400 schools, give or take. And he said some words about that this really is the FBI. You're supposed to know some things. You're running some kind of a conference that we know about. Can't find anybody else doing that in this country. And I said, that's fine, but there's about 2,400 folks. And from that conversation, it was really, I think, one of those aha moments for me. Because they wanted me to go down to DC. They have a Gulfstream at Andrews, literally waiting to bring me and my kids down there. And I said, no, I don't want to go down there. I don't need to go down there. I said, there's 2,400 places. Well, we have about 350 or 400. And I said, okay, let me think about that for about 20 seconds. And I said, well, there's 2 types of flight schools, 61 and 141. And he said, just repeat that again. And I told him. He said, you're really sure? I said, don't hold me to the exact numbers, but I'm telling you there's 2 types of schools. He said, well, we got the numbers from the FAA. We're dealing with the FAA Administrator's Office, sir. And I said, I don't care who you're dealing with. I finally had to stand up and say, those are the numbers. I've got the list because we can tell you we've got a list of flight schools. And in any event, that was the beginning of where I saw a need for culture change, for sure, in the industry. And in this case, it was culture on both the government side and on the school side. On the government side, the 2 silos weren't really even able to communicate effectively and understand, government to government, okay? Because you had the FBI and you had the FAA. And on the independent school side, you had schools that accepted $8,000 to $10,000 in cash, right? You remember that? I'm sure you guys remember that, ladies remember that. They walked in, some of these bad players walked in to schools with an attaché with money. They wanted to learn to fly. And in one or two cases, they even said, we're not worried about landing and taking off, which is pretty critical, right, in our industry. And they took the money. They took the money. So I said to myself, if I had time, I would maybe see if there wasn't a need for a national association for the business of flight training. And that's the history of how we are here today. What it is. I just talked about those letters. Okay, go to the next one. Those letters spell culture, the quality of a person, community, or society. Period. Go ahead. Not going to go through all this with you, but I've taken the word culture. I've presented this once or twice before. And we talk about continuous, unlimited leadership, trending. We're always trending. This conference is about trending, right? Migration is about trending. Unified, return on investment, equity. You want to build equity. Those of you who have 2 airplanes and now have 4, you had 4, you had 8, you had 8, you had 12. And with the way the market is right now, your equity balance is up. You've got to pay it off totally. You've got some money in the bank, so to speak. Okay. We have about 450 members at the present time. We are very focused on the business side, and the safety culture is now coming along for the past 3 years. We stayed out of the culture of safety in the beginning days to build this on the business side, because there was everybody else in the safety side doing stuff. There was everybody, you had AOPA, EAA, Flight Safety Foundation, tons of people out there on safety. And part of my thought process and our board process was, let's build the model, let's build the trade association on the business side, and we'll eventually find our way into the safety part of it, okay? We have had continuous relationship down in DC with both administration and elected officials, so that's not new for us. Interestingly, and I'll come to another slide in just a minute, we do work with elected officials. Back in my previous days at the state level, I walked the hill, I knocked on doors. I don't like to talk about myself, but the one success I think that was so impactful for aerospace in Pennsylvania was the successful completion of the fixed wing and rotary wing removal of sales and use taxes, SUT, because people couldn't even, an overhaul shop couldn't even sell an engine in Pennsylvania because the 6% sales tax. So on a $20,000, $30,000 job, you're paying $1,800. Typical GA pilot, right, who's going to say, hey, I can save that money by flying over to certain states where they don't have the SUT. A little company called Sikorsky also had the same problem. They were based in Pennsylvania, delivering $12 to $18 million helicopters, single engine and twin engine, turbine machines. So you can imagine 6% of say 10 million, right? 600K in my book. And they had to fly up to other states in New England to deliver in order to make sure they had the correct nexus. Otherwise, the 6% had to be paid in Pennsylvania. And that wasn't good. Plus it cost them money. Flying time on the machine, and again, burning jet fuel as well. So it didn't make sense. So Sikorsky got involved with us, part of the United Technology family, and that really helped us along a little bit on that project. But it took about 5 years. Nothing, for the most part, happens quick. For the most part, in the legislative process, when you bake the cake, whether it's the state or the federal level, they all are kind of the same. Especially these days, the way things are in our country. Our staff has grown for operations support. Our main mission is to serve people. We're in the people business. If you are in the flight school business, you are in the people business. Pilots don't fly airplanes, people do. People fly airplanes. So we recognize, our board recognizes, that we are truly in the people business. Sean Tucker this morning really hit it. I mean, he's a great guy, excellent airman, obviously, but you can tell, I mean, if you couldn't tell, his passion, his driven passion for people, I don't know what somebody could have been listening to, because you just see that this guy has that, right? So, as we've gotten busier, and we are a very busy trade association, there is no question. I get to DC from time to time. The past couple of years, there hasn't been a lot going on. You know, DC has been closed. If any of you went to DC, you couldn't walk into a federal building for the most part. Couldn't walk in. And as a result, we kind of put on the back burner our additional support that we wanted to invest, so we held it back a little bit. Now, we have retained the Vogel Group in DC. Alex Vogel is an airman. They've got about 35 other staff, okay, the Vogel Group. And we are very much looking forward to having our office down there as well. We're based in Pennsylvania, by the way, but now we have a DC operation with offices. The Vogel Group is actually manning their own offices, so it's not a remote control office, by the way. We can go there in conference rooms themselves to meet with somebody. They have their staff, many offices there, so they don't work all virtual. And this was another move that we've made in the past 30 days. They also have a couple state offices, one in Tallahassee and one in Nashville, Tennessee. But they are primarily a federally registered lobbying organization, okay? And that's the word lobby. You know, I will share, and I know, you know, we've had great discussion at our board level about this. When you go to DC and you lobby and you talk to the elected officials, you gotta be really careful what you ask for. It's called baking a cake. And a lot of times when you bake a cake, you may think you put everything in to get a chocolate cake. You put chocolate into it, but in DC, after it's baked, it comes out and it looks different. It may even smell different. It may not even have all the chocolate that you want. And so, you know, we are, you know, we're very knowledgeable. I have been in this part of the world, you know, walking the hill, again, like I said, it's about relationships. But again, there's 3 branches of government. Any of you that are not, you know, remembering, right, the 3 branches, you got the judicial, the elected, and the administrative. So we spend a lot of our time with the administration. FAA, TSA, SEDP, just unbelievable amounts of time. And, you know, for any of you that are not members right now, I don't know if you're members or not, I don't know all your names. But, you know, we're trying to teach our members to call us as soon as they've got a problem. Because waiting and then calling us 90 days later takes more energy, more effort, more cost, and, you know, we've been blessed. I mean, and I'm humbly going to say this to you all. AOPA sends flight schools to us when there's certain kinds of problems that they just can't do, because they do not solve all problems. And we solve problems for people. A lot of times, I can't even tell you about it, but I can tell you one of the largest flight schools in this country, with, and my board members know who they are. They were shut down by the FAA, by the local, you know, POI and ASI. I'm not even going to tell you what part of the country. And literally, because of our working with the administration at the high level, we don't get into the business. I don't have time for business people. You know, they're all good people. We don't have time for it. We have to deal at pretty high levels, and we do. And we were able to, within 24 hours, get that school turned back on again. And when I tell you a lot of airplanes, I'm just gonna, I don't want to tell you the exact number, but I'll just tell you, it was a big school in the United States. So, you know, stuff happens. another school last year. Good Kasana member calls me in February, late February of 22, after our conference, which he had attended, our annual conference. And he said, you have a minute. And for, especially for members, we give our time. We sell our time, that's what we got. We give time to them. You pay your dues, we're here to service you, and that's what we do. And he described the problem. He already spent $2,000 or $3,000 with a local civil, non-aviation attorney. A deaf person walked into the flight school, wanted to learn to fly. His staff, and this is a medium-sized school with about 12 to 14 airplanes. So not small, okay? The staff person, very knowledgeable, said, this is a controlled field. I don't think you're going to be able to learn to fly here at this airport. Probably have to go someplace else. This person decided to make a federal case out of it, which they have the right to do. And because it was a federally obligated airport that takes and receives federal AIP grants, they sign sponsor assurances every time they take a new grant. And subsequently, they filed an action with the FAA. And the FAA, believe me, takes that whole category extremely serious at the airport district office level, not the visitor level, but the ADO level. And they started a whole project of reviewing this. So this flight school owner calls us up. Again, really good people. I mean, go to church every Sunday evening. And they just made, they made a mistake, basic mistake. Don't ever turn somebody down. If they don't have a medical, they got to start with the FAA. And that's 101. Get to the FAA. And if the FAA wants to give you a medical or can give you a waiver, like Jessica Cox, those of you who know who Jessica Cox is, fully, no arms, she's our international ambassador for Kasana. She got a medical, and she can fly an airplane. She's a certificated airman. So start that way. But in the meantime, we were able to, with one of our aviation attorneys that helped us out, help this school get out of that mess. But they had already spent a couple $1,000s. So if you're not a member and you want to join us, and our dues are either $150, $250, or $350 based on the number of airplanes, okay? Call us as soon as you got something that you think needs a little bit of extra help outside the regular dues. That's all we ask, because it makes it so much easier to wait until you're halfway down the runway to abort the takeoff, so to speak, okay? I want to point out something. Over the last 2 years, we've been communicating to the industry in our newsletter and to our members. Roughly, these are the numbers between independent flight training. It might go a little higher than the 85 depending on which school you're at. But we also know the 4-year college programs, vary 150 to 250. You get your bachelor's degree, etc. We're not anti-college, by the way. I sit on the board of FIT Aviation School of Aeronautics. This was at a board meeting 2 weeks ago. But there's a big difference in cost. And there's a big difference in how much time it takes to get to your next job as well. Because at 4-year college, you've got 4 years. 4 years minimum. You go to an independent flight school, you can get through literally in much shorter time, probably 18 months. And that includes, if you're going to teach, to build your time at the 1,500 hours. Again, you need at least 1,500 if you're not getting a degree at one of the FAA-approved collegiate institutions, okay, as you all know. In addition, we've done our studies. We have an airline on our board. 65% plus or minus of the career pilots are being produced at independent flight schools. They are not being produced at college. You all are creating the majority of the career pilots. And we put that out publicly in a couple places. I just had an extensive interview with Ford Magazine. It just got published the other day. And nobody is questioning this. There's nobody coming back because the numbers are holding up. And again, I got a board member, luckily, on our board who was actually with an airline. And so we've done some verification along the way just to make sure we're not totally off. about 5 weeks ago in Orlando at our annual conference, we had the official launch of the International Aerospace Accredited Commission, IAAC. The website is under development. It's a separate corporation, separate board of directors. It'll be based at our offices. I cannot run it because the Department of Ed in Washington says it has to be a separation of church and state from the staffing side at the management level, the upper level. This organization will be playing a major role in helping flight schools who decide to become accredited to be able to enroll students and get Title IV money, just like colleges, just like truck driving schools that are accredited, just like career electrical schools, culinary schools, etc. This is something that we've started and stopped at least once in the past 12 years. We're now back on it. Go ahead, Joseph. Basically, and I'm going to go fairly quickly here, but we've got what time do we end here? 4:15? Yeah. Okay. The organization, again, it's a separate organization. So our board at Facade, Jim and Chris, I'm a board member myself. I might end up serving on it, I'm not sure yet. But our board will not be serving on the board of directors of this accredited organization. It's establishing a set of standards, which we've already done. Schools are already beginning to go through accreditation. There's already schools beginning this process. There's an application. I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically, at the end of the day, okay, at the end of the day, when you become accredited and recognized by the accreditor, which is the IAAC, and you get recognized by your state Department of Education, and each state has its own Department of Ed, you all know that, okay? And you get recognized by the Department of Education in Washington. It's a three-legged stool for this program, okay? It will change, it will definitely change the entire view on the career training track. Airlines are already looking at it. The airlines that did buy a flight school, they don't want to take their money. It doesn't make sense. They got enough trouble to run their airlines right now. But if they're going to stay in the school business, they will probably go through accreditation for sure. And at least two of them were at our accreditation seminar the day before our conference started. We had a one-day seminar, which is required by the Department of Education, by the way. Because there's ongoing seminars you have to go to, stay current. You've heard of CEUs, continuing education units, right, from different types of organizations. And so we'll have that same kind of program. And I say we have an executive director, Tom Cooley, who's in Scottsdale. Tom will be and is the executive director right now. We're funding it probably for another couple weeks. And then once the money comes in, starts coming in from the applications for accreditation, then it'll fund itself, so to speak, on a cash flow basis. Go ahead. I'm not going to take every line here, okay? What's the history with Asana? We created this organization, IAAC. When I say we, it turned out, based on the regulations in DC, under the Department of Ed, I ended up being the actual incorporator, so Asana doesn't even have its name on there, and that was guidance given to us, by our chief education legal counsel for the organization, and that would be probably about the most connectivity. Again, it'll be based at our office, but its website is separate phone number, separate website, separate bank accounts. Everything is totally separate. From that perspective, okay? It launched 5 weeks ago. About 50 people came to a one-day seminar in advance. You do need to be a Part 141 school, okay? You need to be 141. And that's just the way the Department of Ed in Washington is calling it. Right now they're calling those shots. And we've met with them before COVID, the Ed people. And maybe down the road, there may be a chance for 61 to get in there, but right now it's 141. Okay, go ahead. Accreditation, real quickly, it's not about money, number one. The first talking point is really about raising the bar, enhancing the industry, making it a better industry on the model side. Right now, everybody knows there's a need for pilots. So, everybody says, well, if you go get your career training, you're going to get a job. But across the entire educational market in Washington, you take all the different jobs, the colleges are under tremendous pressure right now. They truly are. Because in many cases, again, every young person in America has the right to an education, right? You've heard that. And you can go borrow money from the government, you can get Pell Grants, okay? And students going to accredited schools can also get Pell Grants and bring them to your school as well. So this is part of the solution. It's not 100%. Nobody can get 100% funding for education, post-secondary education, through the Department of Education. Whether you're going to Harvard, Yale, a truck driving school, a flight school, you don't get 100%. But you also get qualified for Sallie Mae. You all have heard of Sallie Mae, I'm sure, right? Accredited schools will get recognized by Sallie Mae. So there's numerous pots of money that become available when you go through and become accredited. It's in its infancy, it's at the starting line, and the Department of Education, the Secretary of Education, requires, before they will recognize an organization as an accreditor, you have to be doing it for 24 months. And that is what we're doing now. So the first school, I can tell you what's going to happen. When people at the schools, at the flight schools, start to realize how serious this is, okay, more and more will sign up. But it's going to take, there's going to be a backlog. There'll be a backlog this year. Because certainly you can only staff for so much. There's site visits involved. It's not just fill out a form and send in a check. This is not a pay to play. It is not. Okay, go ahead. What? Yes. The outcomes from this, obviously, you can read it there. A permanent solution for financing career pilot training for American citizens, okay? Fast track program development for graduates of independent flight training providers. There's at least 2 colleges. There's 2 colleges that are now looking at us. Even though they're already accredited, they're accredited under their collegiate side. Their flight schools are not accredited. So there's at least 2 colleges that are now poking around because right now, a college, if somebody comes in off the street to XYZ college and they say, I want to learn to fly and become a career pilot, the school says, oh, you can enroll in a college, right? That makes sense. Maybe the kid or the parents don't want to do that. They want to go to school and learn to fly, become a flight instructor, build some time, and they want to get moving. And the college can't do that. You must enroll in the college program in order to get money to go learn to fly as well. And of course, that's how it's working right now with different schools, like Liberty University. Okay, this is one of them. You all know about Liberty. Okay, the word institution, before you change that, Justin, the word institution right there, colleges are called institutions according to the Department of Ed. A truck driving school that's accredited is an institution. So flight schools are going to have some new wording, not a whole lot of stuff, but there'll be some different changes. And you are going to become an institution, at least in the eyes of the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. Okay. Qualifying candidates, 24 months, you can be out there ready to go, okay, versus a 4-year degree. So roughly, you cut your time in half. A busy flight school does 80 to 100 hours a month. So if you're a CFI right now, teaching someplace at a busy school, do the math, right? You get 250 to 300 hours, 0 to hero, and then you got to get to 1,500 hours, but it's not long. It's not long to get to 1,500 at a busy flight school. In addition, we're going to be helping to lower the wash rate, okay? Before COVID, the regional airlines were washing 20 to 30% of their cadets a class of 20 new cadets, if you put 20 cadets in this room right now, between 20 to 30% at some of the regionals was washing on their cadets. That's after you all created them, okay? I'm not blaming you, don't misunderstand, okay? It's gotten a little bit better because the regionals have been doing a better job on that wash. Okay, go ahead. The accreditation process, again, standard, it's all about standardization. There'll be documents and reports. You don't have to hire a staff of 5 people to do this, but you'll need a little bit more energy, but not a big staff to do it. I've already talked about, the application process, the paperwork, site visits come in. You're going to see your flight school become a better flight school by going through accreditation, even if you don't want Title IV money. And the one thing that I want to make sure you understand is, if you're going to become fully recognized, you do have to do a complete audit. There's 3 levels of accounting, right? You all know there's compilation, review, and audit. And audit will cost you a little more money, but again, based upon what you're going to do on the revenue stream side, you just meld that in to your overall program. An audit might cost you 12 grand, okay? And you'll do it every single year. And every single college, every single accredited culinary school, truck driving school, HVAC school, they all have to do an audit. There's no waivers, period, okay? But believe me, you'll want to do this. Okay, go ahead. Well, everybody knows that, again, it's a brand new agency we just, so to speak, stood up, okay? It helps the public. It helps the public. We're going to go a little over to get started, okay? Okay, so as a result, there's things in the standards that will talk about deposits. Right now, there's a major lawsuit taking place in the United States, in a certain part of the country, because not even foreign students, but domestic American students who borrowed money from American lenders have lost the money. It's happening right now. We're not at liberty to talk about it, but we know all about it. We're very, not involved in it directly, but we're trying to help. And we feel really bad for these kids. And the school should be shut down. But again, the FAA doesn't care about any of this. Believe me. They care about your safety side and your maintenance, your MX. But when it comes to the business, the FAA does not really care about the business side. They got enough to do just to run the safety side of the house. Go ahead. These are the major areas within the standards: safety, security, risk management, business practices, finance and accounting, education delivery, student satisfaction. Okay? Again, deposit. There's no flight school that should be taking $20,000, $30,000 at one time and putting it into the account. And that's what happened, and things was much more money than that. The school, each of the students had borrowed $75,000 to $100,000. And this is happening right now as we're here in this town. Go ahead. I talked about the triad, okay? State, federal, and IAC, which is the accreditor. It takes all three legs of that triad or that tripod. All three have to be working and getting approved to become fully accredited. Next. I'm going to skip most of it, keep it there just for a second, but the timeline is we've started the process. By 2025, we will be putting in our petition to the Department of Ed to be fully recognized. And the interesting part is Tom Kuby, who's our executive director for the accrediting organization, has run accreditors. He's well recognized, he's a professional. People know him in the Department of Ed, so we're really trying to set this up right for the industry, so to speak. I think it's kind of a gift. I don't want to call it legacy giving, but this is a gift in the industry that's long, one of our major goals. Go ahead. You can just follow the timeline up. We publish the standards, okay? We're now beginning to accredit the schools. We'll be petitioning the DO, the ed folks in less than 24 months. They will begin their review process. There's a national advisory committee that has to take a look and bless the accreditor, because we're creating this accreditor. Very seldom this is happening anymore in America. It's not very often that people are standing up new accreditors. It just doesn't happen. And the ed people are looking forward to this because they know there's a need for this to come into the space. Okay. Go ahead, next slide. Okay. This is probably one of the most important standards. And this is going to apply, hopefully, not just to the accredited schools, but to all the flight schools in the country. An IAAC accredited school must conduct a skills assessment, pilot screening, to ensure students have the ability to benefit from the training. And I know the past 2 days, there's another presenter that have talked about, well, what do you do with a student that isn't going to be able to make it? Some schools just pushing you through. They'll push you through, okay? You may have 3 review panel boards, or 2 review panel boards. You fly with 4 different instructors, but we're going to get you through because we want your money. That's not the right approach to flight training today, especially in the career track. And so, within the next week, Vasana will be announcing our first partner who will begin and have the opportunity to do these assessments for flight schools. I know already at least 2 schools that are beginning this process. So it'll be a motor skills test. The test is not going to tell you that you can never fly at 450 knots at 35,000 feet. But it's going to give you some markers that may indicate that you may want to think about this before you go and spend $75,000 to $100,000 more dollars. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be very open about this. It's going to be very interesting to see what the college programs do. And if anybody's here from college, without telling you more detail on that, I know that the colleges are having some problems with that. I know a college in this country right now at their School of Aeronautics where they've got parents writing letters, including letters from attorneys, and the parents want to claw back the money at the collegiate level because they've signed the FAFSA, they've gone and borrowed this money for the collegiate program. And as a result, the school is trying to figure out what are we going to do next. So we do see this pilot assessment and screening coming in, and this is culture change. You are hearing for the first time culture change, at least here at this Redbird migration, about something that is going to be significant over the industry. And the schools that don't do it, you can blow it off, that's fine. But you're going to find that even the airlines are going to want it, because this is going to lower the wash rate at the regionals. It might get it down to maybe 3 to 5% versus 10 to 20%. And every time they have to wash one seat at a regional airline cadet training program, they're losing anywhere from 40 to 80 grand, give or take, depending on how far that cadet is in. So this is a milestone. This has been done for years in Europe. Because in Europe, they don't have the GA population. So they're putting 250 to 500 hour people in the right seat of big machines. You all know what, right? That's what they do. Cathay Pacific has been doing this for years. Cathay Pacific has not put one airframe down ever, that I'm aware of. Not one airframe has gone and hit the dust. And that's significant. But they have a pre-screening program. We are bringing this program out. Again, whether you do it or not, that's up to you. Go ahead. The screening will include basic mental abilities, including information processing, spatial abilities, motor skills, operational abilities, including situational awareness, workload management. Again, these are companies that have been doing this a long time. These are not new companies. We're not introducing new companies. They have been in this space and they know their business. And it's a very exciting time. Go ahead. If you have questions directly, Tom Kuby, he's in Scottsdale. That's his phone number. That's his website. You can get him that way. And the last slide is myself. If you have any questions, that's my email. Phone number of our office, that's not my cell phone, that is my office number. Feel free to call us. We welcome you to join if you're not members of Masana. You know, we even give you a guarantee on your money back, and we've never had to return anybody's money. And we're growing, we continue to grow year over year, pretty nicely. So, I'll take, if you have a couple quick questions before we have to break. Anybody have any quick questions? I'll try to answer. Thank you very much for coming. If we can help you, we're here. Thank you.